All right, welcome to our final session of the conference, and the panelists have promised to kind of stir things up here in this final session, so I'm excited about that. The title of this panel is New Technological Innovations in Emerging Schools. We have Ben Dodson from Doowii, and we also have Amir Nathoo from Outschool, and also Kelly Van Sande from Ignite Learning Academy, and they're going to talk a little bit more about their organizations. But Ben, the floor is yours if you want to get us started.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And am I just doing the quick intro, or?
Yeah, if you'd like to, yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, sure. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Ben Dodson. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Doowii. We're basically a Gen AI data platform that allows folks to interact, access, query, visualize their data just using natural language. We focus specifically only on education data, and we work also directly with institutions in K-12 and higher ed, but also with edtech companies in order to help build out their Gen AI data capabilities. So, for example, we recently partnered with Instructure to help launch Intelligent Insights. The Gen AI behind that product is something we helped build, and then we're right now in about a little over 30 institutions. We launched earlier this year, and we're thinking probably about 50 to 100 by the end of the year is part of the hope. So, yeah.
Yeah, Amir.
Hey everyone, my name is Amir Nathoo. I'm co-founder and CEO of Outschool. And Outschool is a marketplace of live online learning experiences for kids. And our whole thesis is about if we can provide an online marketplace-based model of these learning experiences in K-12, then we can provide unprecedented variety and access to learning experiences that may not otherwise be available locally. And that can enable real personalization and individualization, which can have tremendous benefits for kids. And on the supply side of our marketplace, we teach teachers like creative entrepreneurial professionals. We don't tell them, you must teach this curriculum. We try and eliminate bureaucracy and give them control. And so teachers are able to design the classes that they always wanted to teach. And they do incredible things. We have all the usual kind of core curriculum kind of things. We have classes like Learn Math Through Minecraft, learn about cat anatomy from a vet, learn about meditation for kids, learn about stock market trading for kids. So really expanding the idea of what education can be. And I'm really excited to be at this conference to bring a tech and startup lens to emerging school models, because I really think that if we can combine the best thinking from tech with this incredible work and innovation that's happening in this alternative sector, that we can have like absolutely tremendous impact. And I've talked about online marketplace models. This is common in tech. Think like Airbnb. And how that's transformed how people have accommodation. And think about Uber and Lyft, and that's how it's transformed taxis. But then, what's the relationship between this kind of model and emerging school models? Well, when I founded Outschool in 2015, I wrote, homeschooling is interesting because if some new approach is going to disrupt the current education system and change it radically for the better, it seems likely it would come from outside the system. And this isn't original thinking on my part. This is disruptive innovation theory from Clayton Christensen. Often disruptive change, and when I say disrupt, I don't mean disrupt like disruptive class, like positive change, like real system change. You tend to have to look at the edges, look at the areas where families are already opting out. People are doing something different because they're seeing the breakage in the system. And I wrote that in 2015, and it remains true today. But what's been incredible to see over the last few years is how homeschooling has grown with all these other models like microschooling. We can now think of it as this alternative education ecosystem. And when I started, I thought that we were going to build this platform for homeschoolers, and then we're going to take the learnings from serving this market, and then we're going to try and serve all families with kids in school. And that over time, we were going to build this on-ramp to this new way of thinking about education for all these families. But what's been really surprising is just how fast alternative education has grown. And we don't really need to build an on-ramp. Honestly, the push from the traditional system because of all the challenges is just so great. So I could go on, but I'll pause there and and hand over.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Kelly Van Sande. I'm the founder and owner at Ignite Learning Academy, which is an online private school serving students in grades K through 12. We've got representation in almost every U.S. state and then several countries as well. Though they are primarily U.S.-based students, they're just traveling abroad, living up their best life, or their parents are U.S. ambassadors serving in foreign countries and in similar areas. But most of our students are stateside. I also own a couple of private schools, Ignite Achievement Academy in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, and those schools are in person and primarily, actually exclusively, serve students with special needs. So we use technology in very different ways in each of these schools. I'll focus more on the online school today for the purpose of this. I don't consider it being an online school to really be using technology. It's 2024. Using online technology is just part of our way of life. So being able to get online and even be in a Zoom call or something, that's not really using technology much at all these days. It's just what we do. So having students that are fluent in their ability to do that, that's great, but that's not pushing the limit of what we can do in technology and with our students. Within Ignite Learning Academy, we have 3 very specifically designed programs. We have our general education program, which is your standard program, for students that are on around grade level. We individualize for all of our kids. They can take a mixture of, maybe a 5th grade math class, even though I'm in 4th grade, and because I'm ready for that, and that's great. But we also have a specific program for profoundly gifted students, and we also have a self-contained program for students with mild to severe special needs. And those programs run entirely separate. They're nothing like what your own children might have experienced during those years of COVID schooling. And they use technology all very differently from one another. As a whole, we really believe in the individualization of everything for every child. That's the core mission of what we do on a daily basis. We have very small class sizes and ratios to make sure we can bring that to be a reality for our students. I know we'll talk about AI a little bit today, I'm sure. As our teachers are out there, we're trying to combat, is this real? Do my students do this? So there's that side of AI. But we are living and breathing what transformative properties AI can bring to meeting the needs of our students, where we can now go online and say, I'm going to be teaching this lesson on volcanoes to my 5th grade class today. And I have a student that is going to be working at a 1st grade reading level, and I need this one designed so that student can be fully participating in this class, not at all looking any different than what the peers are doing. And we now have tools at our fingertips that with a couple clicks, a teacher can have a fully redesigned reading prompt or lesson that provides that teacher with resources and reading materials that can be provided to the student that is now at a Lexile level that is maybe far above for that gifted reader, or significantly leveled below for a child who maybe struggles in those areas. That's exciting technology to me in ways that I want to see us be embracing it. We're also using things like VR to bring these students together in a way that's different than meeting in Zoom. In our special needs schools, looking at technology that can allow students to experience places and interactions in a safe environment that will allow them to not literally step off of a curb because I forgot to look both ways, or to have an interaction with an individual and practice a social skill that they can then repeat and practice over and over again, where it's not so scary because I'm not literally talking to you in that moment, even though it feels like I am. So there's a lot of really exciting things technologically that are happening that we're able to be implementing in the online space, in our online schools, in our traditional classrooms, in our special needs classrooms. And I'm excited to be here today so that we can discuss all of that further.
Yeah. So what would you say emerging schools need to be leveraging in this area? So maybe from an AI standpoint or a VR standpoint, what should schools be leveraging maybe that they're not leveraging enough of in your view right now? And how difficult is it to actually embed some of these tools into schools?
So from my perspective, there's this misconception that innovation, technology innovation, is more of a point in time. It is the invention of a new technology or it's the adoption of a new technology. And this is not really what I think innovation within this world is. It's much more of an arduous journey. And it's not enough to say, we have adopted in a Gen AI chatbot, this makes us innovative, right? Our view with our platform is that adopting a data platform doesn't make you know more. It's how you use the data is your vision, and that's not something that you're going to figure out in 30 days or a year. Is also part of a change in the processes, the way your people think about the technology, how they interact with it, and so I think that it's right now. We have a lot of folks that reach out to us because they don't want to be left behind this Gen AI wave, right? But really, I think they don't realize how much they've already been left behind in technology. And there's no real point in worrying about being left by Gen AI because of that. It's whether or not you are prepared on going on this journey of innovation. And I think that is more the thing that you really have to focus on than the specific technology that you're adopting.
And can you tell us, can we dig in a little bit more on that though? In practice, what are those routines, what do those processes look like when you're dealing with the schools you work with?
Sure, when we integrate with an institution, we say, give us all the data sources that you care about, and we'll allow you to interact with those data sources through natural language, right? When we've, in sort of early testing, when we first presented it to some test users, we just kind of gave it to this one administrator, for example. I asked him what he wanted to do, and the first thing he wanted to do was click on the settings button and look at the settings. And we asked him why, and he was like, well, I don't really know what to ask. And so then over time once we got more usage data, we started to show suggested questions, right? And then we started to kind of pre-built things that helped people understand the different use cases. And so I think Douglas Adams got things right in that the question is a lot harder than getting the answer at times. And so now that the platform is continuing to develop, we're seeing a lot of coalescing around certain areas of things that for a long time, educators know that they care about, right? Well, with like within the LMS data, for example, instructional design, student success, they just didn't know how to ask the right questions and then translate those questions into getting the right data to help. So it's a synthesis of ideas, and to me, that's the real innovation, is building out that synthesis and saying, I understand now that I can ask these questions to get data that wasn't accessible before, but I've always known that this was a problem. I've always hoped for this solution, and that's why we're named after John Doowii, because both a combination. He takes his philosophical roots from British empiricism and Hegel, and this idea of the dialectic of evidence, right? It's a synthesis of ideas, and so it's a little ironic to name a tech startup after someone whose ideas are 100 years old, but I think this goes back to my point that innovation doesn't have to be the shiniest new object in the room.
To add from the school side of things, I think one change that we really need to see is this idea of what now exists and what can exist embraced by those who are building our curriculum. Because right now it is really at that teacher level to say, well, there's these great resources, teachers, go find them, use them in all of your free time. I know you have so much of it. And so the great resources might exist, they do exist, but there are a lot of really terrible resources that also exist that are popping up like crazy. If you Google AI teacher resource, that's like teaching your, the kids of like, what is the actual source that we want to use? There are so many terrible, terrible resources that I'm like, please do not ever use that in one of our schools ever. And so there is the training piece of the teacher now has to use their own discrimination and take their time and look at all of that. So in order to really maximize the usage of these tools, it can't fall to the person who's also having to make the lesson, teach the lesson, grade the, assess the students and do all of that. It has to happen at the top level and then be adopted by the district, whoever is adopting, the board, the school, and trickle into the classroom. So we need to see this paradigm shift that it's happening at the top level with our curriculum, embracing these new features that can exist. So, we've seen curriculum go from just textbooks to now we've got the online components, and now you can project it up on your TV or use your smart board or use whatever it is, but we need to see it go further. At Ignite Learning Academy, we use Nearpod a lot. I'm not getting paid to say this. I love Nearpod as a resource. If you're not familiar with it, look it up because it's really an awesome teaching tool, and they have pre-made lessons on like anything that you could possibly search for. If I'm teaching on the Great Pyramids and I want to go plug that in and I'm teaching it to 9th graders, and I can plug in exactly what I'm looking for, and when I do so, it is going to produce all of these different lessons that have actually been looked at and curated, so I know that it is a solid lesson that I can be teaching from, and the resources and sources that it's pulling from are legitimate and accurate and factual. But it also is going to pull in VR resources, and it will take me on 3D tours using Google Earth, where we are now standing inside of one of the pyramids and we're exploring. Things like that need to be second nature in our classrooms, but we need to shift the focus on finding those from our teachers and from those that are in the classroom teaching this to the kids who do not have the time to find all of these, and really have it be embedded into our curriculum from that top-down level. So as we're seeing those curriculums, be on their 10th, 12th, 15th edition, that's my hope, is that we're going to start to see that be present in those online editions and the courses and what's present.
I want to give a two-part answer, a simple one and a complex one, and then maybe spice things up and disagree.
Please do.
So, I think that the simple answer, what maybe should people be thinking about using AI today, and they're not thinking about it enough, is I think it makes total sense to start with reducing teacher workload in admin tasks. A lot of the fancy demos in AI are about how it might be deployed in the classroom or how it might be deployed in teaching. I think there's tremendous opportunity there, but it's going to be really, really complex and tough to figure it out. But right now, today, with the capabilities that you already have with just going to the ChatGPT website, I think there's tremendous opportunity just to start using that. And also, if as teachers, administrators, we start using that, we're also then building our own experience with the technology through the kind of easier and safer admin tasks first before we try and put it in the classroom behind kids. So I think that's an underestimated component. But then, the other thing I think it's worth saying here, and this relates a bit to what you were saying, Ben, about it's not a point-in-time innovation, it's a journey. The reality is we do not know. We do not know where this is going. We do not know what the world is going to look like in 20 years' time once this technology has advanced many generations and has transformed our society. It is hubris to believe that we can do that. And that's why I'll put a disagreement here with this. We can't do this top down. We can't sit here and design and believe we'll be right. And I think the Silicon Valley way, how do you deal with uncertainty? How do you deal with this change when you have things that you haven't experienced before? Silicon Valley is experienced at this, right? Silicon Valley, drove the adoption of the internet. And you can see in that the hubris. People thought that a really good early use case of the internet was going to be buying and selling clothes. Didn't work. Utter failure. But then 10 years later, it did. So, sometimes it's very hard to predict the order of this. And so what I think needs to happen in schools, in all emerging models with AI, is developing a practice of experimentation and shared learning. It shouldn't be the case that teachers and administrators go in a room and try and figure it out. Instead, I think a better model is for teachers to admit to kids, hey, we don't know what the world's going to look like because of technology. Honestly, we don't know how to use it ourselves. Let's go on a journey together. And I think that will result in stronger communities, great learning experiences, even if they don't work out, and then ultimately the innovations where we'll figure out together how AI can be deployed in schools.
Yeah. So there's a pretty interesting study that was recently published in Education Next on Khan Academy users. And the results seem to suggest that it was really your more kind of highly motivated, self-driven students who benefited from the tools, and the rest of the student from the tools that Khan Academy has embedded, and the rest of the students not so much. An example of this, I think, was maybe 5% of students actually took the Khan Academy test, and of course, those 5% of students who took the test passed, right? They did really well. They were the motivated ones. So my question is, are these types of tools that we're talking about when it comes to learning and using AI to accelerate learning, are these much better suited to students who are already kind of highly motivated, self-directed, independent learners? What about the rest of kids? Because I think a lot of times when you talk to schools about especially AI tools, it's like, well, this is going to be a way to accelerate learning for kids who are really struggling, but then the data don't seem to bear that out.
It can't be just for the kids that fall into this pot or this pot. So at Ignite Learning Academy, our students make, on average, regardless of disability or gen ed, an average of 150% of an academic year's worth of growth each year. So our students are highly achieving when they are in our program. And that is actually true for our students with special needs as well, which is just unheard of. So they are all making progress. Profoundly gifted, special needs, Doowii, it doesn't matter. This type of what you just explained is embedded into our program across the board, and it's not optional. So I think if given the option, it's now that extra thing. And our students that often need something the most get piled on because now you need to go do Dreambox, you need to go do IXL, you need to go do Khan Academy, this, you're doing Delta Math. Okay, can I do anything else in life? Well, pretty much no, because you have so many of these other things that you have to do, and they're burnt out, and they're struggling, so it's taking 4 times as long to do any of it, so they're never gonna get to the point of taking the Khan Academy test, because it was really painful to even get through a little bit of the Khan Academy, versus, I have a kid that really has enjoyed math, which did not come from me. And she would be the kid that would do all of the Khan Academy and get to the point of the Khan Academy math and, tests just because she could, and she wants to see herself get 100% at the end. The different components of this cannot be separate. So, to your point, in the top-down piece, I would love to see textbooks just go away. I think we need to live in a point in time when we can say this worldwide event just happened and we can go in and everything's online and we can just update it at the drop of a hat, and we have now updated our curriculum to say this is what just happened in history and it's in there, or this new thing has come available and we can update it so that maybe this great program now can develop something in our curriculum and we can embed it, and now all of the teachers and admin have access to it, and we're not waiting on a reprint of something that is necessary. But these extras, they can't live separate. These need to be a part of what is just the general curriculum that our students are experiencing, and all of our students should have the opportunity to engage with these neat tools. Every student then would be able to have this differentiated tier 1 instruction because student A is kind of on this path and student B is on this path and student C is on this path, and all of a sudden got it. And with different technologies in our classroom, that can be a reality versus the teacher is delivering all tier 1 instruction directly from his or her mouth to the class, and now I have a pencil paper worksheet, or maybe I'm doing some IXL or something along those lines to practice that. But if we can shift that, and now I'm a facilitator, I am a teacher, I am giving some instruction, but now we're gonna come work here, and we're shifting something there in how our tier 1 instruction looks. Our tier 2 and tier 3 instruction are gonna just all become kind of this ball of tier 1 almost, because the tier 2 and tier 3 are happening all within that as these students are on this differentiated AI journey that is assessing and reassessing, and it's pulling in all those components simultaneously.
So my background's not in education, it's in technology. So I don't know how qualified I am to speak to this, but I have a microphone in front of me, so I'm happy to give my perspective. But in my view, technology is not a panacea and shouldn't be adopted as if it is a panacea. And I think this is why I think AI is both simultaneously overhyped and not overhyped, right? Because there's so much application, but you still have to be thoughtful about that application. And I think it's not surprising to me. I haven't read this or seen the study, but it's not surprising to me that highly motivated students at learning would adopt learning tools more readily. But I think thinking about how to apply it more equitably, more broadly, across the non-motivated students is a hard problem, and it's going to continue to be a hard problem no matter what the technology is. I do think, to, I guess, continue to spice things up, I do disagree with what you're saying as far as, I've heard this, like, we don't know where the technology is going, which is kind of, to me, a little like throwing your hands in the air type of opinion, because to a certain degree, we do know where the technology is going, right? We know it's probably not going to get worse. It's probably not going to get slower. It's probably not going to get cheaper, or sorry, more expensive, right? So it's like each of these things we don't know the exact shape of the performance curve, but we do have a sense of, of where the direction that's pointing, right? And there's debate, I think, among AI researchers as far as like how steep that curve is and whether we're closer to the top of the S curve in terms of performance or not. But I think there's still a lot of then actions you can take, knowing that we're currently in this point of time in terms of what the AI can do. If it's going to get 20% better, what does that look like, right? And 20% probably is in a pretty likely future. Probably in the case of it being 3x better, or in the case of AGI, these are much more unlikely scenarios. So you probably don't have to plan for that. We probably do have to plan for that 20% better world, right? So, anyways, I don't even remember what originally my point was, but.
All right, I'll switch tacks and be agreeable. I totally agree with that. I think the uncertainty in my mind, though, is in the application layer. Like, how can this technology be effectively applied in education, and socially, what social changes in the long run are going to be driven by this? Because with the birth of the internet, I think it'd be hard to predict where we are now in many ways. But I want to come back to the kind of measurements aspects of the question. And I think it's been talked about at this conference as accountability. Like, how do we know whether any of this works? And it's also been raised, how are the standard measures of educational success, failing us or no longer relevant? So I think it's a really, really hard problem. And I come at it from the point of view that I do believe the standard measures of success in education are failing us and are not applicable for the future. And it actually relates to this discussion about AI. Because, if we live in this world where today, right now, change is the slowest it'll ever be in our lifetime. Change is the slowest it'll ever be in our lifetime, right now. Acceleration. We live in a period of acceleration. Technology is driving acceleration of change. Then, and it's going to become harder to predict the future. Then how on earth are we going to know what skills or experiences or knowledge our kids need to have when they're going to live in a completely different world than what we do? And if we try and define too narrowly or too opinionately what those knowledge, skills, experience are, we risk failing our kids badly. But then what do we do? Because we, as a society, we need accountability. We want to know that we're doing the right thing. How do we know we're doing the right thing? And how do we know what quality looks like? And we've had to grapple with this already because we're a marketplace. We have all this tremendous variety of classes, everything from academic classes, which could be measured through standard measures, to interest-based classes where the goals are completely different. And then sure, we can ask teachers to define goals and measure themselves or have some accountability within categories, but what can we as a platform do? How do we know as a platform that we're doing well? And the best answer I've come up with so far is that what we should be attempting to do at my company as a platform, but I think this applies to our entire movement, is to increase love of learning. Because if you come out of a class and you've learned some knowledge, but your love of learning has decreased, your confidence to learn, your willingness to try new things, then you are less prepared for a future of change. If you come out of a class and you maybe didn't fully grasp the content or you didn't achieve like the academic goals, but you come away enthused about the subject, eager to learn more, excited to learn in general, then I think we have succeeded. And obviously, ideally, you do both. Like the class achieves its specific goals, but then we're also building this love of learning. And I think I don't know how to measure it. You could do it. We're trying right now with like an NPS, like measurement, Net Promoter Score. So you ask kids, after this class, do you want more? Maybe something like that could work. But I think if we can align as a movement on some kind of meta metric like that we can pose as an alternative for the environment that we for our industry, then I think we can create tremendous value.
Let's start taking some questions. So how about way in the back there?
Thank you. Thank you all. This is fascinating. Appreciate the panel. So I'm on the board of a very small school. We've got 54 kids. We have one head of school and we have one front desk person. And so my question actually is not necessarily around how we use technology to improve student outcomes. So obviously that's incredibly important and noble. If we're using technology in the classroom, it should be improving outcomes. But on the administrative side of things. So I'm curious if you all could address the ways that AI or technology as experts in this field, how it could help with things like financial aid processing or parent communication or all of these things. There's so much that goes in, and we have so many micro school founders and leaders in the room who are trying to run these really lean shops on their own, and that amount of that work can be really burdensome. And so I'm very interested in if you guys have seen any ways that technology can actually change the game there, make those jobs easier so that the administrators have more time to focus on overseeing what's going on in the classroom or overseeing the academic program. And then in addition, any suggestions you have, one of you made the point about kind of networking and connecting with others, which I thought was great around curriculum. I'm wondering, for a school like ours, who can we plug in to talk to? Are there people that are bringing groups together to discuss some of these ideas and figure out how to use it? Because frankly, I would love to be able to bring things like that into our school, but I have no idea where to look. So thank you.
I'll take your first question. ChatGPT should be your very new best friend. My schools are small, in comparison, especially my small private schools for special needs in Charlotte. And I've got all my admins hooked on using that. Of course, you need to, read it, make sure it's all there. But we just had a case of hand, foot, mouth come up at our brand new campus. And so that head of school was like, do we have a repository of, these notices? And I was like, you know what? We do, but we haven't had hand, foot, mouth yet. And she's like, okay, I'll draft it. And I was like, no, give me 2 seconds. And I knew she was in a meeting, and heading to one. So I put it into ChatGPT for her. And I was like, I need a parent notice to notify about, hand, foot, mouth disease, going home, for a school, blah, blah, blah. And I had it 1 second later, from ChatGPT. We use that constantly. If it is like generate a social media post for Memorial Day that is written for a elementary school's Facebook post, it will give you a great one, and then you just tweak it so it sounds like your voice and your wording, or you're writing a paragraph that's the welcome back to school paragraph for your school newsletter. Again, you're tweaking it so it sounds like your voice. I can't even tell you how much I plug into ChatGPT these days because it saves you so much time. Like, could I write those 3 paragraphs? I absolutely could. ChatGPT wrote it in 2 seconds, and it took me another 7 to scan it and make sure it was all ready to go. And it remembers your voice and everything. So as you have an account and it gets to know you and your schools, it will remember things that you've told it previously. So it just gets better and better. And really the main thing to remember is it's only as good as what you feed into it. So if you get it good prompts, it's going to give you a good outcome. So that, I would say, is a huge time saver for my admin team.
Are there other platforms you use? We use ChatGPT for a lot of things, so we've already tapped into that. But like, even just like administering financial aid awards, the technology is crap, frankly. Sorry, this is probably going to be put out somewhere. I won't say which platform we use. But right, like, do you guys see innovations coming online help with those kinds of things? Like the amount of time our staff person spends just navigating that is so significant.
I can say we bit the bullet years ago and purchased, what we use as our student information system. The one that we use is significantly better than the one that we used before that, which does handle everything from our, student information to financial aid to, our tuition piece of it. And so that has made our lives much easier. So it might be worth looking around or come talk to me after. And I can share with what we use, but it might just be that you're using the wrong tool, and there might be one that can make your life a lot easier if you find the right one in that case.
Which goes back to her second question about connecting diverse schools with each other.
I'll just note onto that real quick that there's in sort of just like software development in general, there's now, because of things like ChatGPT, it's gotten cheaper and faster to be able to build custom things, and so. If you look on Fiverr or things like that, to be able to say like what should the expectations to be able to hire a developer for 20 to 50 hours to automate all of the administrative workflows that you're talking about, like that actually might not have been viable a few years ago because of cost, might be very viable now.
So Ben, okay, Amir, did you have a point? Yeah.
I just wanted to put in a quick shout out for magicschool.ai. I don't know if they have a particular solution to the problem that you're saying, but they have a whole suite of AI tools designed for teachers and administrators, and so it's worth checking out.
So Ben, I have to ask you, do you, the administrative minutia, I totally, that makes sense when it comes to ChatGPT a lot, but what about the other academic pieces? I mean, it's amazing to me. I work with a lot of graduate students. It's amazing what you can produce with ChatGPT now, as far as like a literature review is concerned or an essay of some kind. It used to be you'd really have to kind of struggle in the literature, read, write, think, iterate again, and you kind of come out of that a stronger person, a stronger thinker. Do you worry at all about sort of the loss of the struggle, where it gets to a point where you just pop something into ChatGPT, I'm done, but I haven't become a stronger thinker. I don't know much more. I'm just putting in stuff to ChatGPT and handing it off. I mean, is there something, should we be worried about the loss of the struggle, or am I overthinking it?
I can tell you, how we use ChatGPT when our kind of engineering organization, because there has been a significant shift, within developing technology in that, you used to have to write, and when I say used to, like pre-ChatGPT, technical interviews would be very focused around, can you write code, right? Now I would be almost like upset if someone was taking a lot of time to write code manually rather than have ChatGPT do it, because I do. And the thing is, like, that doesn't mean we don't need software engineers anymore. It's just that a lot of the things that were much more repetitive to do, gets faster, more automated now, and people are spending more time doing the kind of design thinking, right? And figuring out how to generate the right code to fit within the organization. And a lot of times that's not just telling ChatGPT to write that code or generate that. It is also kind of back and forth. And that's how I use ChatGPT as well. It's like, give me 10 ideas. Okay, 8 of these don't work. 2 of these do. Let's dive into these 2 more. Okay, explain these 2 in more detail. No, this is not going to work. Do you have any other solution? And so it is I think still a learning process that you're doing. In some ways, I think it's more critical to be able to utilize it that way than. But certainly if you're just say, give me an answer, I'm going to copy and paste, and that's the replacement. And before you were actually going through a critical thinking process, like I do agree with the kind of detriment of that. So again, it's about the application of the technology at the end of the day.
And on the school side, we have to teach our kids how to use the resources that are available to them now, because they're never going to live in a world now where ChatGPT or anything that else rises up is no longer there for them. So I want our students to understand this resource, this tool is there. We'd be naive to ignore that it's not there, but how do you use it? Just to your point, don't spend your time writing code when this is going to be able to do it. Don't spend your time writing a hand, foot, mouth notification letter when you can have it produced for you in 2 seconds. I'd rather you be doing an observation or something else. So don't spend meaningless time, or don't spend time doing a task that can be completed for you. But when we're talking about a 5th grader or a 7th grader who is learning the skills that they'll need to be able to then feed into that as they're older and be able to use the critical thinking skills to then feed it back and forth when I do the same thing and I'm like, nah, that's not quite right, try it this way, because I do the same thing when I'm using ChatGPT. They need to be able to develop those skills. And so that's another shift where we're looking at, from a teaching perspective and a curricular perspective, of how do we then build lessons and activities and assignments for our students where it's no longer just summarize chapter 1 of this book. Okay, that's a terrible assignment these days, because I did not have to read that, and in 2 seconds I now have a complete summary, and I can tell it to rewrite it as a 4th grader just rewrote it, and do it once more just for good measure so it doesn't seem like AI wrote it. And there's what I'm going to submit to my teacher, and he or she won't know, because nothing can keep up with the ability to find out if AI really wrote that, except for your knowledge of your kids. And so the kids already know that, so that is no longer a good way to use that. But maybe we're going to instruct a kid that we are going to use AI to build an outline for chapter 1 of this. And then from that outline, we want it to ask us 3 questions. And then we're going to be getting into groups, and we're going to use those 3 questions to do X, Y, Z. Or we're going to have it ask us, 3 alternative endings to how that chapter or that book could have gone. And now I have to write an alternative ending, and then, and I might do it in class, we are going to be doing it in a different way. But they were able to use the resource. They were able to feed it multiple bits of information. They're able to use what comes back and have familiarity with the tool, but it's not just a give and take, and now I can submit it off as my own, because they need to learn how to actually use it, because it'll only be there forever and ever and getting better.
Michelle, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. So technology, hype, and fear, obviously, right? When college admissions, people are going, oh no, they're going to use it to write their essays. So now you're not going to ask for essays. Or people are saying, oh, it's so exciting, we can do all of this. But people are still stuck in their models. Their current models. We have to learn math, we got to take the SAT, we got to do this, right? So, like at the Digital Learning Consortium, there was a talk about using AI for SEL. Kids who are special needs needing to learn how to ask and practicing interaction, but not building it so sexy that it's going to be your new girlfriend, right? We're talking about making a model that's going to work, right? So what have you seen that's surprising, that's out of the box, that goes beyond what we think of in our daily lives, the admin tasks or the learning your math, which is great. I'm not saying it's bad. But what have you seen that's special, different, outside the box?
So, and again, I can't overstate how underqualified I am to talk about education. I'm not sure if it's pedagogy, still don't know. However, when it comes to AI, I think my part of my goal in creating Doowii was not just the application of Gen AI; it was the application of AI and data science in general. Because I've seen tremendous progress within that realm, and my sense was that progress was not being translated over to education. And so, I have seen a lot of folks that come to us with really difficult questions that they don't know how to answer. And those questions are like, for example, which which interventions, of the 200 interventions that we do, which are the most effective, both from performance, both from cost, right? And that's a simple question, but a really, really hard answer. I was kind of contradicting what I said before, but that's okay. And so to answer that question, actually there's been a ton of advancement within data science in the past decade to be able to answer questions like those, right? So for example, there's a field called causal inference in which allows you to establish causality within your machine learning models with much greater confidence. Back in, everyone kind of points to the seminal paper in 2017, that the transformer paper that led to Gen AI. In 2018, though, there was a paper on something called double machine learning that allowed causal inference models to be run more cheaply, more effectively, and much more accurately. Like, so if I could run that model on your data and say, like, these are the 5 interventions that you should run for your special education learning students, and they're going to be like the most powerful, most impactful, right? That would be really, really useful information. I'm sure that would be very helpful to lots of folks. And at the end of the day, like, that's also AI. So I think some of those are kind of the under the hood AI innovations that are happening that probably don't, they're not as outwardly sexy, right, as the AI bots, but they're equally, if not more important.
Amir? Yeah.
One of the most interesting applications that I saw from a startup was an essay writing tool with ChatGPT embedded, where they just recorded, the student was actually asked, please use ChatGPT to construct your essay, but then the tool recorded all the back and forth between the student and the tool, so that the teacher could see the process. And because in essay writing in the future, or just like communication in the future, that's probably, kids are going to be using ChatGPT, adults are going to be using ChatGPT, and it just changed the type of assessment from being about the end outputs, but more about the process. I thought that was really clever, because it also kind of it shows how, with being a little bit creative, we can turn some of these concerns into new ways of learning and good solutions. And just one kind of note about the kind of struggle question. I think if it's the nature of social and technological change. I think that if our ancestors could see us today, they would consider us completely alien, hopelessly weak and soft. And so, absolutely, the whole point of this is to make the struggle less, and that's a feature of progress, not a bug.
Okay. Yes, right back there.
Kelly, you mentioned using ChatGPT to write up a hand, foot, and mouth notice, policy, whatnot. In that, or in any other instance of using AI to write things like policy documents, do you or would anyone have them reviewed by an attorney just as a CYA before you go using it to represent your company?
If I was having it draft up like my employee handbook, something like that, I absolutely would. My employee handbook I had written by an attorney. That was pre-Chat GPT, so who knows what I would do if I was doing it this way. It might save me a lot of money if I did that and then just had the attorney review it. But in the case of like a form letter or something like that, where it's just, hey, your child was, potentially exposed to hand, foot, mouth. Here are the symptoms to watch out for. Let us know if you have any questions. I do not have that. I did Google one also, and I'm like, yep, that district kind of says the same thing in there, same thing. Yep, those do look like the symptoms of hand, foot, and mouth, and what I remember when my own kids had it, a decade ago, kind of a thing. And when I'm drafting up the Memorial Day post for social media and the Veterans Day post for social media, again, like I'm fact checking, is that actually what we'd celebrate on Memorial Day? Yes, it is. Okay, good. We're ready to go. We didn't mix up Veterans and Memorial Day kind of a thing. So, in those cases where I'm using it in a very low-key fashion, which is primarily how I'm using it, I'm not having an attorney review it, but I do fact check myself if there's ever anything, like hand, foot, mouth. I was like, let's just make sure those are the symptoms, that we're watching out and that's not like strep throat that it pulled in. So I did a quick fact check kind of online for myself. But if it was drafting up, like a non-exempt, exempt employee policy, which one do you fall under, sort of a thing, that'd for sure be going over to, an employment attorney as part of my policy handbook, just as it would be if I wrote it, though, because I am not an attorney, and I wouldn't trust myself either to be the one, to have the be-all, end-all of that. So I would just use my own judgment there on does it need to be or not, but in my cases, no, I'm not typically.
All right. Yes, Nicole.
Thank you. So I might sound a little bit on both sides of things here, but Amir, you had said, and I agree with you, we don't know what the social changes that we will see because of this, because of what we're doing. And I just wanted to go a teeny bit into the social and something that I have observed. So I do run a startup. I head an international organization. I've got a YouTube channel and the podcast and all the things. Okay, so I'm totally into technology and what it can do to reach the people and help the people. And I do think the children need to know about it and how to use it. However, on the flip side of it, I am a person who meets with people about their children and about their addictions and about their things that they're dealing with. And in this world, especially post-COVID, of online learning, which, by the way, I have courses and all that kind of stuff for parents and everything else. I'm not opposed to online learning, but I am meeting with so many parents whose children end up having media addictions, having family problems and stuff like that because of online learning, because of online schools, because of online classes, and so you guys are in that zone, right? So are there any things that you are proactively doing to help, counter that part of the culture, or what, is that even a concern that you have, those types of things?
I'll answer that. This is a topic I care passionately about, because the problems that you describe are absolutely real. And there's enormous amounts of money and smarts going into products that their entire business model is to kind of get us addicted, right? And the attention economy, try to attract our attention. And I don't know what the solution is. I wonder whether, this is an area where we do need regulation. And people might consider in decades' time that this is like the smoking of our generation. There needs to be big warning signs and restrictions around some of this stuff. Because the incentives are, there's enormous amounts of money to be made by enslaving our attention. And we can't stop our kids using, these devices. And I think stopping our kids using these devices, in certain environments can make sense, like some of the regulations passing at school, but ultimately we can't, because the problem is that these tools, these new technologies, are such important and powerful tools of our society. So we do our kids a disservice if we didn't give them access to it. But we have to give them access to it in the right way. So when I think about online learning, which is what we provide, I think that not all online experiences are created equal. If you're in a class that is being led and facilitated by a real human teacher, that's different from being on YouTube with like an endless addictive playlist. So not all screen time is the same. Not all technology interaction with kids is the same. But I don't know what the answer is here, other than we need to create some boundaries as a society, and that probably means regulation. Okay, that might be a good place to stop. So big thanks to the panel. And this is our final session, so thank you for a great conference. Appreciate it.
Couldn't agree more on that one.
Great to meet you. That was really fun.